The morning sun painted golden streaks across the Italian countryside, as Isabella Romano stood before her bedroom mirror, adjusting the delicate lace of her wedding veil. Her hands trembled slightly, not from nerves about marrying Antonio, but from an inexplicable feeling that had been haunting her for weeks. Something felt wrong, though she couldn't place what it was. Isabella had grown up in the small town of Monterosso, where everyone knew everyone else's business. Her father owned the local bakery, and her mother taught at the elementary school. Their life was simple, peaceful, and far removed from the dangerous underbelly of organized crime that plagued other parts of Italy. Or so Isabella believed. 3 years ago, she had met Antonio Benedetti at her cousin's wedding. He was charming, successful, and came from a respectable family of wine merchants. Their courtship had been traditional, with Antonio winning over her protective father through persistence and genuine affection for his daughter. Now, at 25, Isabella was ready to start her own family with the man she loved. As she applied the final touches of lipstick, her sister Maria burst through the door. "Isabella, you look absolutely stunning. Antonio won't be able to take his eyes off you." Maria's excitement was contagious, and Isabella found herself smiling despite the unease in her stomach. The Romano household buzzed with activity. Relatives from across Italy had gathered for the celebration, filling the modest home with laughter and chatter. Isabella's mother, Elena, rushed about ensuring every detail was perfect, while her father, Giuseppe, tried to calm his wife's nerves with gentle humor. Unknown to the Romano family, their every move was being watched. From a black sedan parked across the street, Salvatore Salt Luciano observed the preparations through tinted windows. His jaw clenched as he watched Isabella emerge from the house in her wedding dress, looking like an angel descended to earth. The sight of her in white, about to marry another man, sent waves of rage and longing through his body. Salvatore had first seen Isabella 2 years ago when she accidentally walked into one of his legitimate businesses, a high-end restaurant in Rome, where she'd gone to celebrate her graduation from university. The moment their eyes met, something shifted in the hardened criminal's chest. Her innocence, her genuine smile, the way she apologized profusely for spilling wine on his expensive suit. Everything about her captivated him. Since that day, Salvatore had orchestrated numerous chance encounters. He learned her routines, her favorite coffee shop, the bookstore she frequented every Sunday, but he never revealed his true identity. To Isabella, he was simply Marco, a businessman who occasionally appeared in her life with a charming smile and interesting conversation. She enjoyed their brief interactions but thought nothing more of them, her heart already belonging to Antonio. Salvatore's obsession grew with each passing month. He had his men investigate every aspect of her life, learning about her family, her dreams, her fears. When he discovered her engagement to Antonio, something dark awakened within him. The thought of another man touching her, holding her, claiming her as his wife, drove Salvatore to the edge of madness. His lieutenant, Enzo, sat in the driver's seat, nervously glancing at his boss through the rearview mirror. He had served the Luciano family for 15 years and had never seen Salvatore like this. The man who controlled half of Rome's underworld, who had ordered countless deaths without blinking, was completely undone by a baker's daughter who didn't even know his real name. "Boss, are you sure about this?" Enzo ventured carefully. "Kidnapping her on her wedding day, it will cause problems. The police, her family—" "Silence," Salvatore commanded, his voice low and dangerous. "I've made my decision. She belongs with me, not with that pathetic wine seller. Today, I take what's mine." Back at the church, guests were beginning to arrive. The small Catholic church of San Giuseppe had been decorated with white roses and baby's breath, creating an atmosphere of pure romance. Antonio stood at the altar, adjusting his tie nervously while his best man whispered jokes to ease the tension. Isabella arrived at the church in her father's old but well-maintained car, decorated with white ribbons and flowers. As Giuseppe helped her out of the car, he noticed her pale complexion. "Are you all right, my little star?" he asked, using her childhood nickname. "Yes, Papa," Isabella replied, forcing a smile. "Just wedding jitters, I suppose." The truth was, the uneasy feeling had intensified. As she walked toward the church entrance, she noticed several unfamiliar men in dark suits stationed around the building. They stood out among the cheerful wedding guests, their eyes constantly scanning the area. When she mentioned this to Maria, her sister laughed it off. Antonio probably hired extra security. You know how paranoid rich families can be about wedding gifts and such. Inside the church, Isabella's bridesmaids fussed over her dress one final time. Her best friend, Lucia, handed her the bouquet of white orchids and red roses. "You're the most beautiful bride I've ever seen," Lucia said, tears glistening in her eyes. "Antonio is so lucky." As the wedding march began to play, Giuseppe took his daughter's arm. "Ready, my star?" Isabella nodded, pushing aside her apprehension. This was her wedding day. She was marrying the man she loved. Nothing could go wrong. The church doors opened, and Isabella began her walk down the aisle. Hundreds of faces turned to watch her, their expressions filled with joy and admiration. At the altar, Antonio's face lit up at the sight of her. For a moment, Isabella's worries melted away. This was right. This was where she belonged. Father Michel began the ceremony with traditional Italian Catholic prayers. The ancient words echoed through the church, binding two souls in holy matrimony. Isabella lost herself in Antonio's eyes, remembering their first dance, their first kiss, all the moments that had led them to this altar. When Father Michel asked if anyone objected to the union, a heavy silence fell over the church. This was always a tense moment in any wedding, though objections were rare in modern times. Isabella smiled at Antonio, ready to continue with their vows. The church doors burst open with a thunderous crash. 20 men in dark suits stormed in, weapons visible beneath their jackets. Wedding guests screamed, some diving beneath pews while others froze in terror. At the entrance stood Salvatore Luciano, dressed in an impeccable black suit, his presence commanding and terrifying. "I object," Salvatore declared, his voice carrying across the church with deadly calm. Isabella's blood ran cold. She recognized him immediately. Marco from the coffee shop, the bookstore, the casual encounters she had thought were coincidence. But the man standing before her now was not the charming businessman she had known. This was someone far more dangerous. Antonio stepped protectively in front of Isabella. "Who are you? What is the meaning of this?" His voice shook, despite his attempt at bravery. Salvatore walked slowly down the aisle, his men flanking him on both sides. Guests pressed themselves against the walls, mothers shielding their children, elderly relatives clutching their rosaries. The atmosphere of joy had transformed into one of pure terror. "I am Salvatore Luciano," he announced, his eyes never leaving Isabella's face. "And I'm here to claim what belongs to me." Gasps echoed through the church. The Luciano name was whispered in fear throughout Italy. Even in their small town, people knew of the powerful crime family that controlled much of Rome's underworld. Giuseppe stepped forward, his paternal instinct overcoming his fear. "Please, sir, this is my daughter's wedding. Whatever business you have, surely it can wait." One of Salvatore's men pushed Giuseppe back roughly, causing Elena to cry out. Isabella's fear transformed into anger. "Don't touch my father," she shouted, moving toward Giuseppe despite Antonio's attempt to hold her back. Salvatore raised his hand, and his man immediately released Giuseppe. His eyes softened for a moment as he looked at Isabella. "I have no wish to harm your family, Bella. They've done nothing wrong, except hide you from me." "Hide me?" Isabella's voice cracked with confusion and fear. "I don't understand. You're Marco." "We've only spoken a few times." A bitter smile crossed Salvatore's lips. "Marco was a fiction, created to be near you without frightening you. But I am tired of pretending, tired of watching from the shadows while you plan a life with another man." Father Michel, gathering his courage, stepped forward. "This is a house of God, my son. Whatever grievances you have, violence is not the answer. Please, let these people go in peace." Salvatore's expression hardened as he turned to the priest. "God abandoned me long ago. Father, don't speak to me of peace when the woman I love stands at the altar with another man." The word love sent shockwaves through the church. Antonio's face flushed with anger. "You're insane. Isabella doesn't even know you. You can't just burst in here and claim to love her." "Can't I?" Salvatore's hand moved to his jacket, and several of his men tensed, ready for violence. "I've loved her for 2 years. I know everything about her. Her favorite book is Pride and Prejudice. She takes her coffee with 1 sugar and extra foam. She visits her grandmother every Thursday and brings her fresh flowers. She dreams of opening her own pastry shop someday. When she's nervous, she plays with the silver bracelet on her right wrist, the one her late grandfather gave her for her 18th birthday. Isabella's hand unconsciously moved to the bracelet he mentioned, her face paling further. How could he know such intimate details about her life? The realization that she had been watched, studied, stalked for 2 years made her stomach turn. "You're sick," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I don't love you. I love Antonio. Please, just leave us alone." Something dangerous flashed in Salvatore's eyes. "No." The single word hung in the air like a death sentence. He nodded to his men, who began herding the wedding guests toward the church walls. Screams and protests filled the air as families were separated, children crying for their parents. "Please," Elena sobbed, reaching for her daughter. "Take whatever you want, but leave Isabella alone." Salvatore ignored the pleas, his attention focused solely on Isabella. He climbed the altar, stepped slowly. Like a predator approaching its prey, Antonio tried to shield Isabella. But 2 of Salvatore's men grabbed him, holding him back despite his struggles. "Don't make this harder than necessary," Salvatore said, now standing directly in front of Isabella. This close, she could see the intensity in his dark eyes, the barely controlled obsession that burned within them. "You're coming with me." "No," Isabella said, finding courage in her terror. "I won't go anywhere with you. You're a monster. A criminal. I could never love someone like you." The words struck Salvatore like physical blows, but his expression remained controlled. "You will learn to love me. I'll give you everything. Jewels. Houses. The world at your feet. You'll want for nothing. Except my freedom," Isabella spat back. "Except the right to choose my own life." Salvatore's jaw tightened. He had hoped she would come willingly, that perhaps she had felt some connection during their brief encounters. But he had prepared for resistance. With a swift motion, he pulled a cloth from his pocket. Isabella realized his intention a second too late. As she opened her mouth to scream, Salvatore pressed the chloroform-soaked cloth against her face. She struggled, her wedding dress tangling around her legs, her bouquet falling to the floor in a scatter of white petals. "Isabella!" Antonio roared, fighting desperately against the men holding him. Giuseppe and Isabella's brothers tried to rush forward, but were quickly subdued by Salvatore's men. Within seconds, Isabella's struggles weakened. Her eyes, wide with fear and betrayal, locked with Salvatore's one last time before unconsciousness claimed her. He caught her as she fell, lifting her into his arms with surprising gentleness. The church erupted in chaos. Elena collapsed, sobbing hysterically. Maria screamed her sister's name. Wedding guests wept and prayed, some trying to comfort the Romano family while others huddled in fear. Salvatore turned to address the crowd, Isabella's unconscious form cradled against his chest. "No one follows us. No one calls the police for 1 hour. If anyone disobeys, the Romano family will suffer the consequences." His eyes found Giuseppe. "Your daughter will be safe with me. She will be treasured, protected, given everything she deserves. This I swear on my mother's grave." "She deserves freedom," Giuseppe shouted through his tears. "She deserves the life she chose. She deserves better than a common wine merchant," Salvatore replied coldly. "She deserves to be a queen, and I will make her one." With that, he strode down the aisle, his men forming a protective barrier around him. At the church entrance, Enzo waited. With the car running, Salvatore carefully placed Isabella in the back seat, arranging her wedding dress to preserve her modesty even in unconsciousness. As the convoy of black cars sped away from the church, leaving behind a scene of devastation and heartbreak, Salvatore held Isabella's hand in his. She looked peaceful in sleep, unaware of how drastically her life had just changed. "You'll understand eventually," he whispered, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I'm not the monster you think I am. Everything I've done for love. For you." The cars disappeared into the Italian countryside, carrying Isabella away from everything she had known and into a world of danger, obsession, and a twisted love that would test every strength she possessed. Her wedding day, which had begun with such promise and joy, had become the first chapter in a nightmare from which there seemed to be no escape. Behind them, in the small church of San Giuseppe, a family's grief echoed off ancient walls, and a groom stood at the altar alone, staring at the scattered petals of a dropped bouquet, the only remaining trace of the bride who had been stolen away. The aftermath in the church was a scene of controlled chaos. Father Michele, his hands shaking, tried to restore some semblance of order. "Please, everyone, remain calm. We must have faith that God will protect Isabella." But his words rang hollow in the face of such violence. Antonio finally broke free from his shocked paralysis and rushed to Giuseppe. "We have to go after them. We can't just let him take her." His voice cracked with desperation and rage. Giuseppe, though devastated, grabbed Antonio's shoulders. "You heard what he said. If we call the police too soon, they'll hurt her. We can't risk Isabella's life. But every second we wait, he takes her further away." Antonio's fists clenched, his whole body trembling with the need for action. "I can't just stand here while the woman I love is kidnapped by that monster." Elena, supported by Maria and her other children, approached them. Her face was streaked with tears, but a mother's determination shone in her eyes. "We need to be smart about this," she said, her voice stronger than anyone expected. "That man, Salvatore Luciano, I've heard the name before. My cousin in Rome, she told me stories. He's not just any criminal. He controls judges, police, politicians. We need to be very careful." Lucia, Isabella's best friend, was frantically checking her phone. "There's nothing about the Lucianos online that isn't carefully controlled. Just legitimate businesses, restaurants, hotels, import companies. But everyone knows what lies beneath." The wedding guests slowly began to recover from their shock. Some comforted each other, while others whispered in corners, sharing what little they knew about the Luciano crime family. The name carried weight, even in their small town. Stories of disappearances, of businesses burned down for refusing to pay protection money, of rivals found floating in the Tiber River. An elderly woman, Antonio's grandmother, approached the group. Despite her age, her voice was steady. "I remember Salvatore's father, Don Vincent Luciano. He was a hard man, but he had honor. He never would have permitted this, stealing a bride from God's house. But Salvatore, they say he's different. Colder, more ruthless." "What does he want with our Isabella?" Maria cried. "She's just a baker's daughter. We have no money, no connections to his world." Father Michele, having ushered the rest of the guests out of the church, joined their circle. "Sometimes, my child, men like that don't want money or power. They want what they cannot have." The weight of this realization settled over them. Isabella had been hunted for 2 years without knowing it. Every smile she had shared with the charming Marco, every casual conversation, had been a lie, a predator studying his prey. Giuseppe's phone rang, startling everyone. With trembling hands, he answered. "Hello? Mr. Romano." The voice was cold, professional. Not Salvatore, but one of his men. "Your daughter is safe. Mr. Luciano wants you to know that she will not be harmed. However, any attempt to involve the authorities or to find her will result in consequences. You will be contacted again in 3 days. Wait, please, let me speak to her." But the line was already dead. 3 days, Antonio repeated bitterly. He's giving himself 3 days to get away, to hide her somewhere we'll never find her, or 3 days to convince her to stay willingly. Father Michel said quietly, voicing what they all feared. Meanwhile, in the speeding convoy, Isabella remained unconscious, unaware of the journey taking her further from home. Salvatore had transferred her to a more comfortable position, her head resting on his lap as he gently stroked her hair. To anyone watching, it might have looked tender, even loving. But Enzo, watching through the rearview mirror, saw the possession in his boss's eyes. They drove for 2 hours, leaving the familiar countryside behind. The convoy headed toward the coast, where Salvatore maintained several properties unknown to law enforcement. As they climbed the winding roads of the Amalfi coast, the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The villa they finally arrived at was breathtaking. A white stone mansion perched on a cliff overlooking the Mediterranean. High walls surrounded the property, with guards stationed at every entrance. This was Salvatore's private sanctuary, a place even his most trusted associates rarely saw. Isabella began to stir as they carried her inside. Her eyes fluttered open, confusion giving way to memory, and memory to fear. She found herself in an opulent bedroom, lying on a bed with silk sheets. Still in her wedding dress, now wrinkled and disheveled, she looked around wildly. Salvatore sat in a chair nearby, having changed from his formal suit into more casual attire. He had been watching her sleep, waiting. When their eyes met, Isabella scrambled backward on the bed, pressing herself against the headboard. "Where am I?" she demanded, her voice hoarse. "What have you done?" "You're safe," Salvatore replied calmly. "This is my home on the Amalfi coast. No one will hurt you here." "You hurt me," Isabella cried. "You drugged me, kidnapped me from my own wedding. My family must be terrified. I've already assured them of your safety. They know you won't be harmed." Isabella laughed bitterly. "Oh, how generous of you. You tear me away from everyone I love, from the life I chose, and then graciously inform them I won't be killed? You're insane." Salvatore's expression tightened. "I'm not insane. I'm a man in love who has waited 2 years for you to notice me, to see what we could have together. But you were blinded by that boy, by your small-town life. I'm offering you so much more." "I don't want more." Isabella stood up, swaying slightly from the lingering effects of the chloroform. "I want my simple life, my family's bakery, my marriage to Antonio. I want the freedom to choose." "You chose wrong," Salvatore said, standing as well. "That boy could never protect you, never give you what you deserve." "And what exactly do I deserve? To be a prisoner? To be the pet of a murderer?" The accusation made Salvatore flinch. "I've never killed anyone who didn't deserve it. Every action I've taken has been to build something, to create an empire I want to share with you." Isabella moved toward the door, but Salvatore stepped in her path. "You can't keep me here forever," she said, trying to sound braver than she felt. "My family will go to the police. Antonio will search for me." "Let them try," Salvatore replied. "The police in 3 regions are on my payroll. Your precious Antonio doesn't have the resources or connections to challenge me. The sooner you accept your new reality, the easier this will be." Tears of rage and frustration filled Isabella's eyes. "I will never accept this. I will never stop trying to escape. I will never love you." Salvatore reached out to touch her face, but she jerked away. His hand dropped. And for a moment, she saw something almost vulnerable in his expression. "You will," he said quietly. "Because unlike everyone else in your life, I see who you really are. Not just a baker's daughter, not just a pretty face to decorate Antonio's arm. I see your intelligence, your strength, your passion. I've watched you help your father with the business accounts, seen you stand up to rude customers, observed how you care for your grandmother. You're extraordinary, Isabella, and you've been wasting yourself in that small town." "That's my choice to make," Isabella protested. "You don't get to decide what's best for me." "But I have decided," Salvatore said, his moment of vulnerability passing. "And in time, you'll thank me for it." He moved to the door, pausing before leaving. "There are clothes in the wardrobe, things in your size. The bathroom is through that door. Dinner will be served in an hour. I hope you'll join me. I'd rather starve, Isabella spat. No, you wouldn't, Salvatore replied with a sad smile. You're a survivor, Isabella. It's one of the things I love about you. You'll eat, you'll sleep, and eventually, you'll stop fighting the inevitable. He left, and Isabella heard the click of a lock. She was trapped. She ran to the windows, finding them barred despite the beautiful view. The door to the balcony was locked as well. Even if she could escape the room, she had seen the guards, the walls, the isolation of the villa. There was nowhere to run. Collapsing on the bed, Isabella finally allowed herself to cry. Tears for her ruined wedding, for Antonio's pain, for her family's anguish. Tears for the life that had been stolen from her in a matter of minutes. But as the tears subsided, a different emotion began to build. Determination. Salvatore Luciano might be powerful, ruthless, and obsessed. But Isabella Romano was not some helpless princess in a tower. She would find a way out of this nightmare. She would return to her family, to Antonio, to the life she had chosen, and she would make Salvatore regret the day he had decided to claim her as his own. As the sun set over the Mediterranean, casting long shadows across the villa, two souls prepared for a battle of wills that would test the very meaning of love, freedom, and obsession. In the golden twilight of what should have been her wedding night, Isabella began to plan her escape from the beautiful prison and the dangerous man who claimed to love her. The first week of Isabella's captivity passed in a tense dance of wills. Each morning, she woke in the luxurious prison, hoping it had all been a nightmare. Each morning, reality crashed back as she saw the barred windows and locked doors. But Isabella had not been idle. She studied every detail of her surroundings, every routine of the household, searching for weaknesses. The villa was a fortress, but even fortresses had cracks. Isabella discovered that her meals were brought by an elderly woman named Rosa, whose eyes held sympathy whenever they met hers. The guards changed shifts at specific times. And there was a moment, just a brief moment, when the hallway outside her room was empty during the transition. Salvatore visited her every evening, attempting conversation that Isabella met with stony silence or sharp retorts. He would speak of his day, his businesses, his plans for their future together, while she sat rigid in a chair, refusing to engage. His patience seemed endless, which only fueled her anger more. On the 8th day, Isabella decided to change tactics. When Salvatore arrived for his evening visit, she didn't retreat to the far corner of the room as usual. Instead, she sat at the small table where dinner had been laid out, and for the first time, she spoke first. "How long do you plan to keep me here?" she asked, her voice carefully controlled. Salvatore's eyes lit up at her engagement. He took the seat across from her, pouring wine into 2 glasses. "This is your home now, Isabella. The sooner you accept that, the sooner you can have freedom within it." "Freedom within a prison is still captivity," Isabella replied, but she picked up her wine glass, pretending to consider his words. "Tell me, what exactly do you envision for us? You can't truly believe that keeping me locked up will make me love you." "I don't intend to keep you locked up forever," Salvatore said, leaning forward. "Once, I'm certain you won't run. Once you understand what I'm offering you, you'll have access to the entire villa, the grounds, everything." Isabella forced herself to maintain eye contact, fighting the revulsion she felt. "And what are you offering?" "Exactly. Besides captivity, disguised as luxury, a life beyond your wildest dreams," Salvatore replied passionately. "Travel, culture, influence. You could help run my legitimate businesses, the restaurants, the hotels. Your intelligence is wasted making pastries in a small bakery. With me, you could build an empire." "An empire built on crime," Isabella countered. "On fear and violence and blood." Salvatore's jaw tightened. "My father built this organization on blood. I'm transforming it into something more sophisticated. Yes, some of our methods are unconventional, but we protect our communities, provide jobs, keep order where the government fails. You're a criminal, Isabella said flatly. No amount of justification changes that. And Antonio is a saint? Salvatore's voice turned sharp. Do you know where his family's wealth really comes from? The Benedetti wine business is successful because they pay us for protection, because we ensure their competitors face difficulties. Your pure, innocent fiancé benefits from the very system you claim to despise. Isabella felt her heart sink. Could it be true? She pushed the doubt aside. Even if Antonio's family had dealings with organized crime, it didn't justify her kidnapping. She took a sip of wine, using the moment to compose herself. Even if that's true, she said slowly, it doesn't give you the right to steal me away. Love isn't possession, Salvatore. It's choice. And I didn't choose you, because you never gave me a chance. Salvatore insisted. Every time we met, you were charming, engaged. We talked about books, art, life. There was a connection between us. Don't deny it. Isabella couldn't entirely deny it. As Marco, he had been intelligent, well-read, interesting to talk to, but that man had been a lie. There might have been a connection with Marco, she admitted carefully. But Marco doesn't exist. You're not the man I thought I was talking to. I'm exactly that man, Salvatore said urgently. Everything I said, every conversation we had, that was real. The only thing I hid was my name and my business. The man who discussed Dante with you, who shared your love of classic films, who made you laugh, that's who I am. No, Isabella shook her head. The man I talked to wouldn't drug a woman and kidnap her. The man I talked to had respect for others, gentleness. You're showing me who you really are now. A man who takes what he wants, regardless of the cost to others. Salvatore was quiet for a moment, then stood abruptly. You're right, he said, surprising her. I have shown you the worst of myself. My impatience, my jealousy, my desperation. But Isabella, can't you see? You drive me to this madness. The thought of losing you to another man, I couldn't bear it. He moved to the window, looking out at the darkening sky. Do you know what my life was before I met you? Darkness, violence, an endless cycle of maintaining power and crushing enemies. Then you walked into my restaurant, spilled wine on my suit, and laughed. Not a nervous laugh, not fear, genuine, infectious joy. In that moment, you brought light into my world. Despite herself, Isabella felt a tiny crack in her armor. The raw emotion in his voice seemed genuine, but she reminded herself that many monsters were capable of feeling deeply. It didn't excuse their actions. If I truly brought light to your world, she said quietly, then you've extinguished it by bringing me here against my will. Whatever you felt when we met, you've corrupted it with this obsession. Salvatore turned back to her, and she saw pain flash across his features. Perhaps, he admitted, but I would rather have you hate me and be near me than love another and be lost forever. That's not love, Isabella said firmly. That's selfishness. Call it what you want, Salvatore replied, his momentary vulnerability hardening back into determination. But it changes nothing. You're here. You're safe. And in time, you'll understand. After he left, locking the door behind him, Isabella sat in the gathering darkness. The conversation had revealed more than Salvatore probably intended. His obsession ran deeper than she had realized, but it also made him vulnerable. He wanted her love, craved her acceptance. Perhaps she could use that. Over the next few days, Isabella began to soften her approach. She still didn't eat meals with him, but she engaged in conversation during his visits. She asked about his legitimate businesses, showing interest in the restaurants and hotels. Salvatore, eager for any positive attention from her, shared more and more. She learned that he had a younger sister, Sofia, who lived in Milan, far from the family business. His mother had died when he was 15, and his father had been assassinated 3 years later, forcing Salvatore to take control of the organization at barely 18. The stories he told revealed a man shaped by violence and loss, who had never known a normal life. "Did you ever want something different?" Isabella asked one evening, genuinely curious. "A life away from all this?" Salvatore considered the question. "When I was young, I wanted to be an architect. I loved designing things, creating beauty from nothing. But when my father died, there was no choice. Someone had to lead the family, protect our people. My uncle would have taken over. But he was weak. The organization would have crumbled, and our enemies would have slaughtered everyone loyal to us." "So you sacrificed your dreams," Isabella observed. "I adapted," Salvatore corrected. "I found other ways to create. The legitimate businesses, the renovations of historic buildings, the art I collect. And now, the life I want to build with you." Isabella felt an unexpected pang of sympathy before crushing it. Many people faced difficult circumstances without becoming criminals. "I understand loss," she said carefully. "My grandfather died when I was 17. He was everything to me. Taught me to bake, to see beauty in simple things. When he passed, I thought my world would end. But you had your family," Salvatore pointed out. "I had no one but the organization. You had your sister, who I had to send away to protect her from this life," Salvatore said bitterly. "She hates me for it. Hasn't spoken to me in 5 years." The revelation hung between them. Isabella filed the information away. A sister who had escaped, who lived freely in Milan. Perhaps an ally, if she could find a way to contact her. As the days turned into 2 weeks, Isabella's apparent softening had the desired effect. Salvatore began to relax his guard, allowing her supervised walks in the villa's gardens. The grounds were extensive, with terraced gardens descending toward the sea. Guards were stationed at every exit, but Isabella used these walks to map the property. Noting possible escape routes, Rosa, the housekeeper, proved to be a potential weak link. During one of their brief interactions, Isabella learned that Rosa had a grandson the same age as her, that she had worked for the Luciano family for 30 years, and that she didn't approve of Isabella's captivity, though she was too fearful to voice it directly. "He's not a bad man," Rosa said one day, unprompted, as she set down Isabella's lunch. "Just a lonely one. His father was cruel, beat him and his sister. Salvatore protected her, took the beatings meant for Sofia. Everything he's done, right or wrong, comes from pain. Pain doesn't justify causing pain to others," Isabella replied softly. Rosa nodded sadly. "No, it doesn't. But understanding it might help you survive this." The old woman's words stayed with Isabella. She was beginning to build a picture of Salvatore that was more complex than the simple monster she had first believed him to be. But complexity didn't equal excuse. Many people suffered without becoming kidnappers. One evening, Salvatore arrived with a gift, a beautiful evening gown in deep blue silk. "There's a gathering tomorrow night," he explained. "Business associates, but also artists, musicians, respectable people. I want you to accompany me." Isabella's heart raced. A gathering meant people, potential allies, possible escape opportunities. But she kept her expression neutral. "As your prisoner? As my companion?" Salvatore corrected. "I want to show you the legitimate side of my world. The culture, the connections, the influence used for good. Many of Italy's most respected citizens will be there. And if I refuse, then you'll miss an opportunity to see beyond these walls," Salvatore said simply. "But Isabella, know this. If you attempt to escape or create a scene, there will be consequences. Not for you, never for you, but for those who might help you. I protect what's mine, but I'm ruthless with those who try to take it from me." The threat was clear. Anyone who aided her would suffer. Isabella weighed her options. Staying in her room gained her nothing. Attending the gathering would at least give her information, perhaps opportunities she couldn't yet foresee. "I'll need shoes to match the dress," she said finally. Salvatore's face lit up with genuine pleasure. "Of course. I'll have a selection brought to you. And jewelry. Sapphires. I think. To match your eyes. After he left, Isabella held up the gown. It was exquisite, clearly couture, worth more than her family made in a year. The thought of wearing it, of playing the role of Salvatore's willing companion, made her sick. But she would do it. She would smile, charm his associates, and look for any weakness in his armor. The next day passed slowly. A hairdresser and makeup artist arrived to prepare her for the evening. Isabella submitted to their ministrations while her mind raced with possibilities. The gathering would be her first contact with the outside world since her kidnapping. Surely someone there would help her, would see that she was being held against her will. When Salvatore arrived to collect her, he stopped in the doorway, visibly stunned. Isabella had to admit the stylists had done their work well. The gown fit perfectly. The sapphires sparkled at her throat and ears, and her hair was swept up in an elegant style that emphasized her natural beauty. "You're breathtaking," Salvatore said softly. "Like a goddess descended to earth." Isabella forced a small smile. "Shall we go? I wouldn't want to keep your associates waiting." Salvatore offered his arm, and she took it, suppressing her revulsion at the contact. They walked through the villa to a large ballroom she hadn't known existed. The space was magnificent: crystal chandeliers, marble floors, frescoed ceilings depicting mythological scenes. But it was the crowd that caught Isabella's attention. At least 100 people filled the room, dressed in formal attire that screamed wealth and status. She recognized some faces from newspapers. A senator, a famous actress, a renowned surgeon. These weren't street thugs but Italy's elite, mingling freely with a known crime lord. "Surprised?" Salvatore murmured in her ear. "The lines between legitimate and illegitimate power are blurrier than most people realize. Half the people in this room owe their success to my family's influence. The other half pay us for various services: protection, problem-solving, connections. Corruption," Isabella said under her breath. "Reality," Salvatore countered. "Come, there are people I want you to meet." He guided her through the crowd, introducing her as his dear friend to various guests. Isabella smiled and made polite conversation, all while scanning for potential allies. But she quickly realized that everyone here was either in Salvatore's pocket or too afraid to cross him. A distinguished older man approached them, Judge Matteo Conti. Salvatore introduced him. Isabella recognized the name. He was known for his tough stance on crime. Yet here he was, shaking hands with one of Italy's most powerful criminals. "Miss Romano," the judge said, kissing her hand. "I've heard so much about you. Salvatore is a fortunate man." "Thank you," Isabella replied, wondering what exactly he had heard. Did he know she was here against her will? The judge's eyes gave nothing away. As the evening progressed, Isabella began to understand the true extent of Salvatore's power. It wasn't just violence and intimidation. It was integration into the very fabric of society. Judges, politicians, business leaders, even clergy, all connected in a web of mutual benefit and assured destruction. During a moment when Salvatore was engaged with business associates, Isabella found herself alone on a balcony overlooking the sea. The cool night air was a relief after the stifling atmosphere inside. She gripped the railing, fighting back tears of frustration. How could she escape when the entire system was corrupted? "It's overwhelming, isn't it?" a female voice spoke beside her. Isabella turned to find an elegant woman in her 40s, with kind eyes and graying hair styled perfectly. "I'm sorry?" "The realization of how deep it all goes," the woman continued. "I'm Francesca Moretti. I teach at the University of Rome. Ancient history." "Isabella Romano," Isabella replied automatically. "Are you associated with Salvatore's business?" Francesca laughed softly. "My husband is. I'm what you might call a reluctant participant in this world. I married for love, not knowing the full extent of my husband's connections. By the time I understood, it was too late. We had children, a life built on shaky foundations." Isabella's heart raced. Here was someone who might understand. "Did you ever think of leaving?" Every day for the first 5 years, Francesca admitted. But leaving isn't simple in this world. It's not just the danger. It's the practicalities. Bank accounts monitored, passports controlled, every movement tracked. And if you have children, she shook her head, you learn to make peace with it. Find meaning where you can. I won't make peace with it, Isabella said fiercely. I was kidnapped from my wedding. My family doesn't know if I'm alive or dead. This isn't a life, it's captivity. With golden bars, Francesca studied her carefully. You're the baker's daughter. We heard about the wedding. Salvatore has never done anything like that before. You must have affected him deeply. His obsession isn't my responsibility, Isabella said bitterly. No, it's not, Francesca agreed. But it might be your key to survival. Men like Salvatore rarely show vulnerability. If he truly cares for you, that gives you power. Use it wisely. Before Isabella could respond, Salvatore appeared in the doorway. His expression was neutral, but Isabella saw the tightness in his jaw. Isabella, there's someone else I'd like you to meet. Francesca excused herself with a meaningful look at Isabella. As Salvatore led her back inside, he said quietly, be careful who you confide in. Not everyone here is as sympathetic as they might seem. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of faces and conversations. Isabella played her part, smiling and nodding. While inside, she seethed with new understanding. Her prison wasn't just the villa, it was an entire network of complicity and corruption. When they finally returned to her room, Salvatore lingered at the door. You did well tonight, he said. You were gracious, charming. People were impressed. I played the role you wanted, Isabella replied, removing the sapphire earrings. Don't mistake performance for acceptance. Still, Salvatore said, it's progress. In time, you'll see that the life I'm offering isn't the nightmare you imagine. There's beauty in it. Purpose. Power to do good. Power built on suffering, Isabella countered. Beauty paid for with blood. I saw your world tonight, Salvatore. It's even more horrible than I imagined because it hides behind respectability. Salvatore's face hardened. The world is horrible, Isabella. I didn't make it that way. I simply learned to navigate it, to thrive in it. And I can teach you to do the same. I don't want to learn, Isabella said firmly. I want my old life back. My simple, honest life. That life is gone, Salvatore said, his voice flat. The sooner you accept that, the happier you'll be. He left, locking the door as always. Isabella sank onto the bed, still in the beautiful gown that felt like chains. The evening had shown her the true scope of her situation. Escape wouldn't just mean getting past guards and walls. It would mean evading an entire network of influence and power. But the conversation with Francesca had also given her hope. There were others trapped in this world. Others who understood. And where there was understanding, there might be aid. Isabella began to formulate a new plan, one that would require patience, cunning, and the ability to play a role she despised. She would become what Salvatore wanted to see, a woman slowly accepting her fate, maybe even developing feelings for her captor. She would gain his trust, expand her freedoms, and wait for the perfect moment. It might take months, even years, but Isabella would find her way back to freedom. As she finally changed out of the gown and into simpler clothes, Isabella made a vow. She would survive this. She would escape, and she would make sure that Salvatore Luciano regretted the day he decided to steal her from her wedding. The game between them was far from over. It was just beginning.